Chapter 9. The Hidden Encampment. Exhaustion carried her for days after the attack. The wanderers had now started moving restlessly, haunted by the smoke of their lost camp. Each step felt heavier, each fire dimmer, yet they pressed on. For to stop was to surrender. For to stop was to mean to stop fighting. It was during these long marches that she first heard whispers of another refuge, an encampment hidden deeper into the valleys where defectors from many settlements lived together. Some said it was a myth, others said it was a salvation. Her resolve sharpened with the rumor. If such a place existed, it meant she was not alone. It meant resistance was more than just isolated sparks. She listened intently to the scraps of direction, to the way elders lowered their voices when speaking of it, to the hope that flickered in silver-haired women's eyes, though her lips denied it. The thought of a community built on freedom rather than fear lit a fire within her because, it aligned with her. She longed to see it, to be there, to be with them, to be in it. Their journey was perilous. Traits twisted through ravens and storms battered their fragile tents, and food grew scarce. The boy with the dog cried one night that they should return to the ashes of their old camp, but the others pressed on. They folded old maps and scratched onto bark, guided by stars that shifted in patterns only the oldest wanderers could read. And always, she walked near the front, carrying not only her own burden, but the weight of their hope. At last, they found it. Hidden in a valley rigged by a cliff, the encampment lay sprawled like a secret city. Fires glowed between rows of shelters built from stone and wood. Voices echoed in dozens of tongues, and faces of every shade turned toward the newcomers. For a heartbeat, she thought she had entered a dream. So many lives living without a doctrine, without chains. Suspicion greeted them before welcome. Guards with rough spears and scarred faces demanded to know their origins, where their whereabouts had been. When she stepped forward, whispers rippled. The mark on her palm betrayed her past, but it was her eyes, burning with defiance, that held their gaze. At last, one of the guards nodded. She has fire. She has arrived. She has come. Let them in. Inside, she found a world unlike any other she had known. Children laughed without hymns on their lips. Women spoke without lowering their heads. And men sang songs of grief, triumph, kindness, arm in arm with their contemporaries. Around each fire, stories wove together, stories of escape, of defiance, of survival, of joy, of peace. For the first time, she felt not only freedom, that belonging, but also the weight she had carried since the binding lifted, if only just slightly. But even here, unity was fragile. Arguments still erupted nightly, some demanding they fight back against the settlements. Some arguments were insisting they remain hidden. It was controversial. Voices clashed over scarce food and over territory, as humans become. It clashed over whether newcomers could be trusted or not. She saw in their anger the same cracks that had lived in the settlement, proof that even freedom carried its own burdens. Still, she believed the camp was proof that another way was possible. Her days became quickly filled with tasks. She gathered food, she gathered wood, she gathered water, she learned to mend clothing with spread spun from flax. She trained with others in the use of simple weapons, her scarred palm gripping a spear until the pain dulled, even numbed. Each night she fell into sleep, not as a prisoner or a fugitive, but as one of many voices striving for a future unbound. It was during these days that she first noticed him. He was unlike the others, not in stature or voice, but in the way he carried himself. Although he The very act of walking was a quiet defiance. His hair was cut unevenly, a reminder of escape rather than vanity, and a scar traced the back of his head like a forgotten story that wanted to tell something. The people of the camp called him by name he had chosen for himself. Different. Different did not seek her out, nor did he shrink from her presence. Their first true meeting was by the water trench, where she struggled to lift a bucket swollen with rain. Without a word, he steadied it with one hand and met her gaze with eyes that seemed to ask questions. He never spoke aloud. In the silence, something stirred, something gentler than survival, yet not less fierce. And over the weeks, their paths crossed more often. He taught her the strength in patience when sharpening spear tips from stone. She showed him how to weave flax threads tighter so garments would not unravel. They did not need many words. His quiet attentiveness, her cautious laughter, those spoke more volumes than the doctrine's endless chants ever did. In his presence she felt not observed or judged, but no. The elders debated, though, the nights, whether to hide, and it kept on going, or whether to fight, or whether to scatter before doctrine's searches had arrived. She listened, torn between fear and the fragile joy she had found. For the encampment, she had discovered not only freedom, but now something she had never imagined, the warmth of being loved, not out of duty or out of being told, but for one she had chosen. Different ones told her under the hush of a fire-gone embers. The world named me unworthy, so I named myself. Different means I'm not theirs anymore. His words sank deep. She touched the scar on her palm and whispered, "Then I too am different." He smiled, not triumphant, not possessive, but as if he had been waiting all his life to hear those words. It was encouraging. Yet, through this all romantic, rosy glasses, danger remained close. Scouts returned with word that settlements searched more fiercely than ever, hunting not only for her, but for who defied doctrine. The elders' voices rose until dawn, splinting between the desperate and the defiant. She sat in silence, her hand resting near difference. Belonging had always been her dream, but not now at what cost, she thought. Love made her more vulnerable. She couldn't believe she'd even thought of that word. But also, it had made her stronger, more resolute in the fact that she wanted this. She had always wanted this. That's why it had brought her here. So if doctrine found them, it would not only be freedom at stake, it would not be for different. It would be for a difference. The hidden encampment was proof that freedom could exist, but it also had a fragile spark in a storm. She knew then that her journey was far from over. To protect this place, to protect different, to protect herself, she would need to rise beyond survival. No more running. The doctrine's reach had followed her, and soon she would have to face the music. One night, as the fire dimmed and voices softened into sleep, she looked across the camp at Different. His head bowed, his scar catching the glow, his presence steady as stone. As always, he was a rock of Gibraltar. For the first time, she felt the weight of how her vow, not as a burden, but as a gift she wanted to offer to him. Freedom was no longer only hers to claim, it was theirs to defend. And she knew he knew it too. She pressed her palm into the earth, scar burning against the soil, and whispered a vow to the stars, hoping and hoping that they may carry it. They will not take this from us, not while I breathe. The night whispered with silence, but in the silence, she felt the camp's fire echo her own words.